Ambassador Zelthra of the Galactic Concordat stood in front of the large holographic display, his four eyes narrowed in frustration. The latest edition of the official galactic navigational charts hovered before him, rotating slowly to show the vast expanse of known space. Thousands of star systems, hundreds of inhabited worlds, dozens of spacefaring species, all meticulously mapped, categorized, and open for trade and exploration, all except one region. Once again, the vast area beyond coordinates 27.892 was marked, with a simple red boundary and the words, "Human Space, No Entry." For centuries, the maps had ended there with no explanation. No other species had such a designation or protected territory. "Magnify Section 27.8, Zelthra ordered. The map zoomed in, showing the last known outposts before human territory began. 4 centuries of diplomatic relations, and still they give us nothing beyond this line. His assistant, a young Trilaxian named Vril, shifted nervously. "The humans have always been protective, sir." Protective? Zelthra's upper eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of irritation in his species. "The word you're looking for is secretive, possibly dangerous." Vril had no response to that. Few in the Concordat spoke openly about humans that way. They were respected, even feared, despite their relatively recent arrival on the galactic stage. On the other side of the Concordat station, Katie Miller was getting lost again. The human diplomat checked her datapad and sighed. 3 weeks at her new post, and she still couldn't navigate the twisted corridors designed to accommodate a dozen different species with very different concepts of logical layout. Katie was 28, fresh from Earth's diplomatic academy, with bright blue eyes and short brown hair kept in a practical bob. This was her first off-world assignment. When she'd received her posting to serve as a liaison to the human delegation at the Concordat, she'd been thrilled. Now she was mostly confused. "Excuse me," she called to a passing Meridian. "Could you point me toward the arrival docks, section C?" The insectoid being clicked its mandibles and pointed down a curving hallway with one of its 4 arms. Katie thanked it and hurried along. She was already 10 minutes late to meet the human delegation. Commander John Owens of the Earth Defense Force stepped off the shuttle ramp and surveyed the docking bay with practiced eyes. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with close-cropped gray hair and the bearing of someone used to being obeyed. His simple blue uniform bore minimal decoration, just a silver pin showing Earth and its moon, and 3 small stars on each shoulder. Unlike most visiting dignitaries, he traveled with minimal entourage, just 2 junior officers and a sealed case handcuffed to his wrist. No fanfare, no ceremony. "Commander Owens." Katie hurried across the deck. "I'm Katie Miller, your Concordat liaison. I apologize for the delay." Owens nodded briefly. "No harm done, we've only just arrived." His voice was deep and measured. "I've prepared quarters for you and your team in the diplomatic wing. The Concordat. Council will convene tomorrow at station time 0800. Several member species have questions about trade permissions near your borders." "They always do," Owens said, falling into step beside her. Katie led them through the station's main concourse, a vast open area where representatives of dozens of species mingled. Many glanced at Owens as they passed, conversations pausing briefly before resuming in hushed tones. "They're curious about you," Katie observed. "Curious is fine. Exploration is what we humans do best." Owens adjusted the case at his wrist. "It's when curiosity becomes intrusion that problems start." In the science division of the station, ambitious, Vexor scientist Lirotep hunched over his console, ignoring the bustle of the lab around him. He was small for his species, with pale blue skin that darkened around his eyes and fingertips. What he lacked in physical presence, he made up for with intellectual intensity. The screen before him showed sensor readings from the edge of human space where his research vessel had been conducting routine gravitational mapping. "Coming to the evening meal, Liro?" asked his colleague. "Soon," he muttered, not looking up. "I need to review these readings first." On the screen, unusual energy patterns flickered just beyond the boundary of human territory. patterns that matched no known technology in concordant records, patterns that shouldn't exist. Lirotep had built his career studying anomalies, and he knew when he'd found something extraordinary. He quickly saved the data to his personal device and cleared the screen. That evening, Katie found herself in one of the station's observation lounges with Commander Owens. The vast window showed the swirling red and purple nebula that surrounded the station. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. Owens nodded. "Reminds me of the Eagle Nebula back home." Katie seized the opportunity for conversation. "Commander, I've been studying the official maps of concordant space. I couldn't help but notice that human territory is different from other member regions." "Different how?" His tone remained neutral, but something in his posture changed. "Well, for one thing, no detailed mapping is available, and there are all these warnings about unauthorized entry." Katie turned to face him. "Most new diplomats get a thorough briefing on all concordant members, but for humans there's practically nothing beyond basic history." "And that bothers you?" Owens asked. "I'm just curious. We're supposed to be allies, but there's this wall of secrecy." Owens was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the nebula. Finally, he spoke. "There are good reasons some borders remain undefined, Ms. Miller. Some knowledge is a burden, not a gift." Before Katie could press further, Owens' communication device buzzed. He checked it and frowned. "I need to send a secure transmission to Earth. Will you excuse me?" After he left, Katie remained by the window, wondering what he wasn't telling her. Across the station, Lirotep was making similar connections as he reviewed his secret findings with growing excitement. The next morning, the Concordant Council chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from all 17 member species sat in their designated areas with additional observers lining the walls. Commander Owens sat alone at the human delegation table, his case still secured to his wrist. Ambassador Zelthra called the session to order. "Before we address scheduled matters, the Vexor delegation has requested time to present a scientific proposal." Lirotep approached the central podium, trying to hide his nervousness. "Esteemed Council, my research team has detected unusual energy signatures at the border of human space. We believe these indicate important phenomena worthy of closer study. I propose a research expedition to cross the boundary under controlled conditions." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Katie glanced at Owens, whose face had become a mask of stone. "Such an expedition would violate long-standing agreements," Zelthra noted. "For the advancement of scientific knowledge," Lirotep countered, "we must sometimes reconsider old restrictions. What are humans hiding that we cannot even approach?" All eyes turned to Commander Owens as he slowly stood. "The borders of human space are closed for your protection, not our convenience," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the chamber. "That is all I am authorized to say on the matter." Lirotep would not be deterred. "Protection from what, Commander? After 4 centuries, don't we deserve to know?" Owens's eyes narrowed. "Some questions are best left unasked, Doctor, and some boundaries are best left uncrossed." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Lirotep and Owens locked eyes, across the chamber, neither willing to back down. Katie Miller watched them both, suddenly certain that her simple diplomatic posting was about to become much more complicated. 3 days after the tense council meeting, Lirotep paced in his private lab, reviewing his plans once more. The council had officially denied his request to explore beyond the human border, but he was not deterred. Science demanded answers, and he would find them. "You're really going through with this?" Dr. Susan Ward leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed over her lab coat. She was one of the few humans who worked in concordant space, a neurobiologist with 20 years of experience. Her auburn hair was streaked with gray, and her green eyes held both intelligence and concern. "I have to," Lirotep said. "Don't you find it strange that your own people restrict access to such a vast region of space?" Susan sighed. "There are reasons for those restrictions, such as..." When she didn't answer, Lirotep continued. "See? Even you don't know, or won't say." "What I know," Susan said carefully, "is that the Earth Defense Force doesn't make rules without cause. Crossing that border is dangerous, Liro. That's why I need you on the expedition." He moved closer, lowering his voice. 4 of us are going. We need someone who understands human protocols if we encounter your people. Susan's eyes widened. You want me to help you break my own government's laws? I want you to help ensure nobody gets hurt, he countered. If we encounter trouble, you can help us communicate. She should have walked away, she should have reported him. Instead, Susan felt a pull of curiosity. What was out there? Why had she been told throughout her career never to ask about certain regions of human space? When do you leave? She asked finally. Tonight. Research vessel Horizon, Southern Docking, Bay. On the other side of the station, Katie Miller found herself in an unexpected meeting with Commander Owens. They sat in a small, secure room where he had swept for listening devices before speaking. I've reviewed your service record, Owens said. Top of your class at the Academy. Fluent in 4 alien languages. Requested this posting specifically. Katie nodded, unsure where this was heading. Why? He asked. Why request assignment to the Concordat when you could have had your pick of more prestigious posts? She considered her answer carefully. Because this is where species meet and learn to work together. And because I was curious about why human space remains such a mystery, even to our own diplomats. Curiosity, Owens repeated. That scientist, Lirotep, is curious too. Dangerous quality sometimes. Do you think he'll give up after the council's decision? Owens gave her a long look. Would you? Before Katie could answer, Owens's personal device buzzed with an urgent alert. His expression darkened instantly as he read the message. I need to go, he said, standing abruptly. Someone has made a terrible mistake. After he left, Katie sat confused. What had just happened? Her own device pinged with a message. Meet me at Docking Bay 7 in 20 minutes. Emergency situation. Owens. Across the station, the research vessel Horizon prepared for departure. It was a small ship, designed for scientific surveys with a crew of 10, though tonight it carried only 5. Lirotep, Susan Ward, and 3 of Liro's trusted colleagues. Pre-flight checks complete, said Nari, the Celsian pilot. Her scaled fingers moved deftly across the controls. Station control has cleared us for departure. What reason did you give for the trip? Susan asked. Routine nebula sampling, Lirotep replied. We're scheduled to return in 3 days. By then we'll have answers. The ship detached from the station and moved away smoothly. Susan sat at a communications console, feeling increasingly uneasy. She tried sending a message to Earth Defense Force headquarters but found the channel mysteriously jammed. That's strange, she muttered. What is? Lirotep looked over her shoulder. Nothing, she said quickly. Just checking some readings. 6 hours later, the Horizon approached the border of human space. On the view screen, there was nothing visually distinctive about this region, just stars and the empty black between them. Yet every map in the galaxy showed a clear line. Do not cross. Final chance to turn back, Susan said. Please, Liro, this is a mistake. The scientist shook his head. We've come too far. Begin recording all sensor data. We cross in 30 seconds. Susan closed her eyes briefly. Whatever happened next was beyond her control. The ship moved forward. On the displays, a dotted line showed their position crossing the boundary into human space. For several minutes, nothing happened. No warnings, no intercepts. See? Lirotep said triumphantly. Nothing to fear. Susan wasn't convinced. She knew. Earth's defense protocols were thorough. If nothing had happened yet, it only meant the response was still coming. Back at the Concordat station, Commander Owens and Katie Miller boarded his personal ship, the EDF Valiant. It was small but clearly military-grade with sleek lines and concealed weapons systems. Where are we going? Katie asked as they settled into the cockpit. To prevent a disaster, Owens said grimly. That Vexar scientist didn't accept the Council's decision. He's crossed into human space with a research vessel. Katie gasped. How do you know? We know. Owens activated the ship's engines. We always know. The Valiant detached from the station and accelerated to speeds Katie hadn't thought possible for a ship this size. The stars outside blurred. On the horizon, the mood had shifted from nervous excitement to scientific focus. They were nearly an hour into human space with no incidents. Sensors were collecting data on everything: unusual energy readings, gravitational anomalies, radiation patterns. "These readings don't match anything in our databases," one of the scientists reported. "Look at these energy signatures. They're unlike any known technology." Lirotep was practically vibrating with excitement. "We're making history today. The first non-humans to document this region in centuries." Suddenly, all the ship's systems flickered. The lights dimmed, then returned. "What was that?" Nari asked, checking her controls. Susan felt cold dread rising in her chest. "We need to leave. Now." "But we've only just—" Lirotep began. "Trust me," Susan cut him off. "We've triggered something. We need to go before—" The space around them lit up like daybreak. Where there had been empty space moments before, massive energy signatures now appeared on their sensors. The ship's warning systems blared. "Unknown vessels detected," Nari reported, voice shaking. "Many vessels. Surrounding us." On the view screen, shapes materialized from nowhere. Sleek, dark ships with no visible markings. They moved with impossible precision, forming a perfect containment pattern around the horizon. "Stealth technology," Susan whispered. "They were here all along." A communication signal cut through their systems, overriding all security protocols. A human voice, calm but commanding, filled the bridge. "Attention research vessel. This is Captain Greg Bentley of the Earth Defense Force. Your vessel has violated sovereign territory. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Lirotep looked at Susan, fear replacing his excitement. "What will they do to us?" Susan had no answer. She had crossed a line she had been warned never to cross, and now they would all face the consequences and learn why the maps stopped at human space. The boarding was swift and efficient. 6 human soldiers in sleek black armor entered the horizon through the main airlock. They moved with practiced precision, securing the vessel in less than 2 minutes. No words were spoken. No weapons were drawn. They didn't need to be. The research team was escorted to the ship's small conference room. Lirotep tried to appear calm, but his blue skin had darkened with stress patterns betraying his fear. Captain Greg Bentley entered last. He was shorter than Commander Owens but carried the same air of absolute authority. His dark eyes scanned each face around the table before settling on Susan. "Dr. Ward," he said evenly, "you should have known better." Susan met his gaze. "I came to prevent a disaster. And yet here we are." Bentley turned to Lirotep. "Your ship has been impounded. Your research data has been secured. You and your team will be detained until this situation can be resolved." "We were conducting peaceful scientific research," Lirotep protested. "We meant no harm. Intent is irrelevant. The boundary exists for a reason." "What reason?" Lirotep demanded. "What are humans hiding out here?" Bentley's expression didn't change. "That information is classified." Lirotep wasn't satisfied. "We are members of the Galactic Concordat. We have rights to—" "Your rights ended when you crossed that line," Bentley interrupted coldly. "The treaty your government signed is very clear on this matter." The captain stepped back and tapped his wrist communicator. "Escort the research team to secure quarters. Dr. Ward comes with me." As the others were led away, Susan remained seated. When they were alone, Bentley's formal demeanor softened slightly. "Susan, what were you thinking? You have clearance level 3. You know enough to understand how serious this is." "I know we have restricted zones," Susan replied. "I don't know why. Nobody does except the highest levels of Earth Defense Force." Bentley seemed to consider his next words carefully. "There's a reason for the secrecy. So everyone keeps saying," Susan said with frustration. "But no one ever explains what that reason is." On the EDF Valiant, Commander Owens and Katie Miller hurled through space at speeds that bent the normal rules of physics. Katie had never experienced anything like it. The stars outside weren't just streaks. They were barely visible ripples. In the darkness, "This ship isn't using standard concordant drive technology," she observed. "No," Owens agreed without elaboration. "How are we moving so fast? The trip from the station to the border should take at least 12 hours. We'll arrive in 20 minutes. Owens checked his instruments. "I've received confirmation that Captain Bentley has secured the research vessel." Katie watched him, trying to understand this stoic man. "Commander, I know diplomatic protocols. By now, the Concordat Council will have learned that Liratep crossed the border. They'll be demanding explanations. Ambassador Zelthra will expect me to provide information." "What will you tell him?" Owens asked, testing her. "Nothing, because I know nothing," Katie answered truthfully. "That's the problem. How can I represent human interests if I'm kept in the dark about basic facts?" Owens was quiet for a long moment. The only sound was the soft hum of the ship's engines. "What I'm about to show you exists nowhere in your records," he finally said. "The Concordat is young, barely 5,000 years old. Humanity isn't protecting our territory from you. We're protecting you from what's in our territory." Before Katie could ask what he meant, the ship dropped out of its enhanced speed. The view screen showed the horizon floating in space, surrounded by 4 Earth Defense Force vessels. But that wasn't what caught Katie's attention. In the distance, something massive loomed against the backdrop of stars. It was clearly artificial, a structure of some kind, but unlike anything she had ever seen. It seemed to be made of a dark material that absorbed rather than reflected light, with geometric patterns that hurt her eyes when she tried to focus on them. "What is that?" she whispered. "We call them the precursors," Owens replied. "They were here millions of years before any of our civilizations." The Valiant docked with Captain Bentley's ship. When they boarded, Bentley was waiting with Susan Ward. "Situation report," Owens ordered. "Research team secured. No data transmissions were sent before we arrived. The structure remained stable, but proximity sensors detected a slight energy fluctuation when they entered the perimeter. It noticed them," Owens concluded. "It seems so, sir." Katie struggled to process what she was hearing. "Wait, are you saying that thing is alive?" "Not alive in any way we understand," Susan explained, "but not entirely dormant either." Owens made a decision. "Dr. Ward, take Ms. Miller to Observation Deck 3. She needs to see what we're dealing with." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Susan explained what she could. "When humanity reached the stars, we found artifacts and installations throughout what is now our territory. Some were still active after millions of years. Why haven't other species discovered them?" Katie asked. "They have. In the ancient past. It rarely ended well for them. They entered a small observation room with a large viewport. The structure was much clearer from here, enormous beyond comprehension, stretching for what must be thousands of kilometers. This is a containment facility," Susan said. "One of dozens in human space." "Containing what?" "We don't know exactly. The precursors were fighting something, or someone. They built these installations as weapons or prisons or both. When they disappeared, they left everything running." On the bridge, Commander Owens and Captain Bentley reviewed the sensor data from the Horizon's incursion. Energy levels increased by 3% when they approached, Bentley reported. "Standard containment protocols are holding, but I recommend moving to Level 2 alert status." "Agreed." Owens studied the readings. "Have the research team seen any of this?" "No, sir. They've been kept in secure quarters away from any viewports or data terminals." "Good." Owens looked out at the massive structure. "Earth Defense Council will want a full report. This is the 3rd boundary incursion this year. The Concordat species are getting more curious," Bentley noted, "or more reckless. It was inevitable. We can't keep this secret forever." Back at Kamwa, the Concordat station, Ambassador Zelthra faced a crisis. Word had spread that a research vessel had crossed into human space and been detained. Representatives from 17 species demanded action, explanations, diplomatic protests. The Horizon was on a sanctioned scientific mission. The Vexar, Ambassador insisted. "This is kidnapping!" "The mission was not sanctioned," Zelthra corrected. "The Council explicitly denied permission. That doesn't give humans the right to detain our citizens. The argument continued until a communications officer interrupted. Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission from Commander Owens. Owens's face appeared on the main screen. He looked grim. Ambassador Zelthra, I'm contacting you regarding the illegal incursion into human space by the research vessel Horizon. We demand the immediate release of the scientific team, the Vexar ambassador shouted before Zelthra could respond. That won't be possible yet, Owens replied calmly. However, I have been authorized to provide limited information about the situation. The chamber fell silent. This was unprecedented. I will be returning to the station with diplomatic liaison, Katie Miller. She will present evidence explaining certain aspects of our border restrictions. I suggest you convene a special session of the High Council for this briefing. What kind of evidence? Zelthra asked. The kind that will change how you see the galaxy, Owens answered, and humanity's place in it. The transmission ended, leaving the gathered ambassadors stunned. On the observation deck, Katie stared at the massive precursor structure, trying to comprehend its scale and purpose. All this time, she said softly, humans have been guarding these things? Why keep it secret? Susan's expression was solemn. Because knowledge brings responsibility and danger. The Concordat deserves to know. Perhaps. But Commander Owens is taking a huge risk by showing even this much. Some things once learned can't be unknown. Katie turned from the viewport to face Susan. What's inside that structure that's so dangerous? The future of the galaxy, Susan answered. Or its end. News of the incident spread quickly through the Concordat station. By the time Commander Owens and Katie Miller returned, rumors had already multiplied. Some claimed humans had destroyed the research vessel. Others insisted that Lirotep had discovered something so valuable that humans had seized it for themselves. The truth, Katie knew, was far more complicated. The Concordat Council chamber was filled beyond capacity when they arrived. Representatives from every member species were present, along with their staffs and security details. The tension in the air was thick. Ambassador Zelthra called the emergency session to order. Commander Owens has requested this meeting to address the border incident. The floor is yours, Commander. Owens stood calmly at the center of the chamber. He placed a small device on the podium before him. For centuries, humanity has maintained strict border controls around our territory. Many of you have wondered why. Today, I am authorized to provide limited answers. He activated the device. A holographic display filled the air above him, showing Earth as it was 300 years ago. This is humanity's first contact, not with another sentient species, but with something far more ancient. The image showed a small human vessel approaching what appeared to be a derelict station near Jupiter. As the vessel drew closer, the station suddenly came alive with light. Our explorers accidentally activated a dormant system left by a civilization we now call the precursors. They vanished millions of years ago, but their technology remained. The hologram shifted to show the aftermath. The human vessel destroyed. Jupiter's moon Europa partially shattered. 27,000 people died that day, Owens said quietly. We learned a harsh lesson about meddling with technologies beyond our understanding. Back on Captain Bentley's ship, Lirotep had managed to escape from his quarters. The Vexar scientist was not a military man, but he was clever. He had observed the security protocols and found a pattern in the guard rotations. Now he moved carefully through the ship's maintenance tunnels, seeking access to a communications terminal or, better yet, his confiscated research data. His scientific curiosity had become an obsession. He had to know what humans were hiding. He found a junction box and carefully pried open its panel. Inside was a data port that might connect to the ship's systems. Lirotep pulled a small device from his hidden pocket, a universal interface tool that every good scientist carried. With trembling fingers, he connected it to the port and began bypassing security protocols. In the council chamber, Owens continued his presentation. After the Europa incident, we discovered more precursor sites throughout what is now human space. Some were weapons platforms of unimaginable power. Others contained data archives with technologies we still can't fully comprehend. And some were containment facilities. Containing what? Ambassador Zelthra asked. We don't know exactly, Owens replied. The precursors were at war with something. The records are fragmented. What we do know is that they built these facilities to imprison or control powerful entities or technologies that threatened them. The hologram changed again, showing various structures scattered throughout human space, all massive, all built, with the same strange geometry that seemed to defy normal physics. For 300 years, humanity has maintained these sites, ensuring their containment systems remain operational. We've integrated our technology with theirs where possible, created monitoring systems, established protocols. Katie watched. The assembled representatives. Some looked skeptical, others frightened. Many were whispering urgently to their aides. Why keep this secret? One ambassador called out. The Concordat could have helped. The decision was made by our ancestors, Owens replied. They feared that knowledge of these technologies would lead to attempts to exploit them. They feared other species might accidentally trigger what we barely managed to contain. The Trilaxian, Ambassador rose. Or perhaps humans simply wanted these powerful technologies for themselves. Owens shook his head. If that were true, do you think we would still be just one member of the Concordat? With what lies in those facilities, we could have conquered the galaxy centuries ago. That silenced the chamber. On Bentley's ship, Lirotep had successfully connected to a data terminal. His fingers flew across the interface as he searched for his confiscated research. Instead, he found something far more valuable: schematics of the massive structure they had been observing. The images made little sense to him. The technology was unlike anything he had ever seen, but he could recognize enough to understand that this was something extraordinary. He began downloading files to his device. Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the ship. A voice came over the communication system. Security breach in Section 7. All personnel on alert. Lirotep worked faster, trying to complete the download, before he was discovered. In the council chamber, a communications officer hurried to Commander Owens and whispered urgently in his ear. Owens's expression darkened. We need to pause this briefing, he announced. There's been an incident. What kind of incident? Zelthra demanded. Before Owens could answer, every light in the chamber flickered simultaneously. The holographic display, distorted then stabilized, showing not Owens' presentation but something else entirely. It was a live feed from Bentley's ship, focused on the massive precursor structure. But something was happening to it. Parts of the structure were moving, reconfiguring themselves. Lights that had been dormant for millennia were coming alive, spreading across its surface like a wave. What is this? Katie whispered to Owens. It's activating, he replied, his voice tight with tension. Someone's triggered the facility. On the ship, Lirotep stared in horror at his data terminal. The download had triggered something. Warning messages flashed across the screen in human, language he couldn't read, but the red color and urgent symbols needed no translation. Security forces burst into the room, weapons drawn. Behind them came Captain Bentley, his face a mask of cold fury. What have you done? Bentley demanded. I just wanted information, Lirotep stammered. I didn't activate anything. You accessed classified files on an active precursor site. The system logged your intrusion and interpreted it as an authorized command sequence. Through the viewport, they could see the massive structure pulsing with increasing energy. Parts of it were unfolding, revealing components that had been hidden for eons. Bentley turned to his security team. Initiate emergency containment protocols. Alert all ships in the sector. This is not a drill. In the council chamber, pandemonium had broken out. The feed from the ship showed the precursor structure awakening, and the implications were clear to everyone. Owens raised his voice above. The chaos. This is exactly what we've been preventing for 3 centuries. This is why human space is restricted. The chamber quieted as he continued. Ambassador Zelthra, I need to return to the site immediately. Katie Miller has been briefed on the situation. She will continue this presentation and answer your questions as best she can. What's happening out there? Zelthra asked, genuine fear in his voice. Something that's been dormant for millions of years is waking up, Owens replied grimly, and we need to put it back to sleep before it's fully conscious. As Owens hurried from the chamber, Katie found herself suddenly the focus of every alien. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. What Commander Owens didn't have time to explain, she said, is that humanity has chosen to bear this burden alone, rather than share the nightmare with the rest of the galaxy. The precursor facility pulsed with ancient power. Energy readings were off the scale as dormant systems reactivated after millions of years. Inside the command center of Captain Bentley's ship, alarms blared constantly. Status report, Commander Owens demanded as he strode onto the bridge. He had made the return journey in record time, pushing the Valiant's engines beyond safe limits. The facility is in Stage 3 activation, Bentley replied grimly. It's scanning nearby space. We believe it's searching for targets. Targets? Whatever. The precursors were fighting. The facility seems to be running automated defense protocols. Owens looked at the main view screen where the massive structure continued its transformation. How long until full activation? 40 minutes, maybe less. And if it fully activates? Bentley's voice was grim. Based on what we know of similar facilities, it could release enough energy to sterilize every system within 50 light years. The Concordat homeworlds would be affected. Owens turned to Susan Ward. Doctor, you've studied the precursor language more than anyone else here. Can you access the command systems? Susan looked uncertain. Possibly. The interface terminals might recognize human input, since we've been maintaining the outer systems for centuries. It's worth trying. Take a team and get over there. As Susan prepared for the dangerous mission, Lirotep sat in detention, crushed by guilt. His scientific curiosity had potentially doomed billions. I never meant for this to happen, he told, the guard outside his cell. The human guard's face remained impassive. Few disasters begin with bad intentions. Back at the Concordat station, Katie Miller continued the emergency briefing. She displayed the classified files Owens had authorized her to share. These are the records of humanity's 300-year guardianship, she explained. When early human explorers discovered the first precursor site, they had two choices: try to claim the technology for themselves or protect everyone from it. The holographic display showed images of humans working on enormous alien structures, integrating their own technology with systems millions of years old. They chose to protect. Generation after generation of humans have maintained these sites, keeping ancient weapons dormant, containing forces that could destabilize the galaxy. Ambassador Zelthra studied the images. Why not destroy these facilities if they're so dangerous? We tried, Katie replied. In the early days, we attempted to dismantle one of the smaller installations. She called up another image, a crater where a small moon had once been. The defense systems interpreted it as an attack. 20 million people died on a nearby colony. The council chamber was silent as the implications sank in. Suddenly, a new alarm sounded. The station's sensors had detected something massive appearing at the edge of the system. What is that? Demanded the Trilaxian ambassador. The main screen showed a fleet of ships materializing from jump points, hundreds of vessels of all sizes, all bearing Earth Defense Force markings. The human fleet, Katie explained. Protocol Terminus has been activated. What does that mean? Zelthra asked. It means we're facing an extinction-level event. At the precursor facility, Susan Ward and a team of specialists had boarded the ancient structure through an access point humans had established centuries ago. The interior was alien and disorienting, corridors that seemed to shift and change, lighting that flickered with patterns that hurt human eyes. This way, Susan directed. The primary interface chamber should be ahead. They moved carefully through the massive structure, following paths mapped by generations of human caretakers. Around them, the facility hummed with increasing power. Dr. Ward, one of the engineers called out. These readings don't match our records. The activation sequence is different. Susan checked the data and felt a chill. It's not just activating, it's evolving. The systems are reconfiguring based on new data. What data? The engineer asked. Us, Susan realized. It's learning from our presence, our technology. Every time we've interacted with it over the centuries, it's been gathering information. They reached the central chamber, a vast space dominated by a crystalline structure that pulsed with light. Alien symbols flowed across surfaces that weren't quite solid. Susan approached what appeared to be the main interface. Let's hope this works, she muttered, placing her hands on the control surface. In space, the human fleet had taken position around the active facility. Hundreds of ships formed a perfect containment pattern. On the Valiant's bridge, Commander Owens received the latest update. Susan's team is inside, Bentley reported. They're attempting to access the command systems. And if they fail, then we execute the Orpheus Protocol. Owens nodded grimly. They both knew what that meant, sacrificing every ship and person in the area to create an energy surge that might disrupt the facility's activation. It would mean their deaths but might save billions. On the Concordat station, Katie watched the massive deployment of human forces with a mixture of awe and dread. All this time, Ambassador Zelthra said quietly, humans have been standing guard over these things. Yes, Katie replied. It's why we've always been so protective of our territory, why we've limited our own expansion. Someone had to watch over the precursor sites. Why didn't you ask for help? Katie turned to him. Would you want this responsibility? To know that one mistake could end all life in the galaxy? Would you want your children to grow up with that burden? On the main screen, they could see the precursor facility now fully awake, scanning nearby space with energies that human instruments could barely measure. Inside the facility, Susan worked desperately at the alien interface. Sweat dripped down her face as she attempted to communicate with systems designed by minds utterly different from her own. It's searching, she told her team. Looking for enemies from a war that ended millions of years ago. Can you shut it down? An engineer asked. Not directly, but maybe. Her fingers moved in patterns established through centuries of human study. Maybe I can convince it the war is over. On the Valiant, Owens watched the countdown timer. 5 minutes until the facility reached full power. The Orpheus Protocol would need to be initiated soon. Commander, a communications officer called out. We're receiving a transmission from inside the facility. Susan's voice came through, distorted but clear enough. I think I've found a solution. The facility is designed to identify and eliminate threats. I'm feeding it historical data showing peaceful coexistence between species. Will that work? Owens asked. Unknown, Susan replied honestly. But it's responding to the input. On screens throughout the human fleet and back at the Concordat station, everyone watched as the energy readings from the facility fluctuated wildly. The transformation that had been underway suddenly paused. It's working, Susan reported. The facility is reassessing its threat analysis. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the energy readings began to decrease. Parts of the structure that had unfolded started to close again. Containment holding, Bentley announced. The facility is returning to dormant state. A cheer went up from the bridge crew. Owens allowed himself a small smile of relief. In the council chamber, Katie watched as the crisis abated. The representatives of 17 species looked at her with new understanding. Ambassador Zelthra approached her. I think we owe humanity an apology, he said quietly. And our thanks. 3 days later, Commander Owens stood before the full Concordat Council. The research team had been released back to their governments with strict security protocols. Lirotep faced sanctions but would recover. The precursor facility was once again dormant, though with enhanced human monitoring. In light of recent events, Ambassador Zelthra announced, the Council has voted unanimously to formally recognize human space as protected territory and to offer assistance in patrolling its borders. Owens nodded in acknowledgement. We accept your help. The burden is easier when shared. As the session ended, Katie approached Owens. What happens now? Now the real work begins, he replied. Centuries of secrecy have ended. There will be changes. Together, they looked at the newly updated galactic map displayed in the chamber. Human space was now clearly marked, but with a new designation. Protected Zone. Approach only with authorization. Beneath it, smaller text read, "Here stand the Guardians."